Hi, my name is Jessica Markowitz, and I'm doing my presentation on the case study of Uber. So I thought it was important for a little bit of background information on Uber. As we all know, Uber is a transportation network company. It's headquartered in San Diego, where it was first invented and founded by two men who also had two startup companies and didn't really work out. So they figured they'd combine to make one company and more efficient for the costs, and this was in 2009. And I think personally, Uber, and I think other people in research can agree that Uber is in fact one of the key contributions to the downfall of taxis. So just like a quick exercise, I want everyone to think of when's the last time they took a taxi? And think about that a little. And then I also want you to think, when's the last time you took an Uber? So that kind of goes to prove my point. A little bit of the histories about taxis. At one time, taxis were actually the only competitors in the market. So with no competition, they can be kind of considered a small monopoly. And taxis were the main way of transportation for commuters who didn't want to take the subway or the trains, who just wanted to go by car. So at this point in the market, economically, taxis were very strong. So what once seemed so efficient has now kind of turned to a last resort option for people. So people can ask what happened. And in research I found that really what happened was Uber. The startup of Uber kind of gave customers a new option and an easier option and a more efficient option of traveling. So next I want to talk a little bit about the regulatory system, and this is prior to Uber, so this is referring to taxis. So taxis were governed by regulations as well as Uber, but now we're focusing on the taxis. So this was on almost every aspect of taxi services. Examples of this were taxi cabs. They had to apply for permits and insurance because the cars the drivers were driving weren't owned by themselves, they were owned by the company. Along with this, drivers had to have special licenses, not just driver's licenses, so they had to pay for this training. And just standard requirements are a lot higher than Uber's. So you can ask yourself whose interests were served, whose interests weren't served. So I think the interests that were served were the taxi companies themselves, because they were the ones who were making the decisions, who were able to discuss prices and negotiate things. And the people who weren't served, personally, I feel that customers weren't served because they had no input, but they also had no other choice but to take these cabs. So coming out of this, benefits for the taxi companies, I would say that, one, again, being the only competitor in the market, they didn't really have to do much to preserve these benefits, once again, because customers had no other options. So going a little bit more into Uber, I'm going to talk about their growth strategy a little. So first, Uber, they like to focus on freedom. So in research, I found that under their freedom, they kind of have more cashless pay. So customers in cabs kind of worry about, oh my gosh, I don't have cash, how am I going to get home, this and that, and receipts. So Uber kind of takes away that worry because they do have cashless pay, which is a transaction through a credit card on the mobile device. And speaking of mobile devices, Uber likes to be proud in their technological app. So this is pretty much how Uber's ran through an app, and this is just an advancement of technology, which isn't the old wave down a taxi cab and they pick you up. And lastly, diversity is really important for their growth strategy. The way they diversify themselves is they have different types of Ubers that someone could take. Some examples of this is UberX, which is just a regular standard car that gets you from point A to point B. They have Uber XL, which is an option for more passengers to be in the car. And they also have Uber Eats, which is an option that someone delivers your food. And they have a few different options, but this diversifies them from other companies because they like to have a lot of options. So another thing important to the growth strategy is expansion. So Uber started, as I said, in San Diego, but it kind of spread to main business city areas. But now Uber actually has spread to 65 countries and over 600 cities in the entire world. So expansion is key to Uber's growth because now they're going into a global market. Sorry. So going into Uber, obviously, like everything else, there's always goods and there's always bad. So some customers do have issues with Uber. A few of the issues that I found in research were that customers were saying they were getting canceled on, and some customers felt that they just weren't efficient rides. So the main challenges of Uber, I would say, is trust and safety and the cancellations and the accuracy of the company. To explain this a little bit, for trust and safety, customers want to know who they're getting in a car with. They know that they're safe and they're comfortable, and they want to be able to get to point A, point B efficiently and safely. And also customers do want to make sure that when they're waiting for their ride, they're getting their ride and they're not being ditched by their ride and waiting in the cold. So Uber did notice these challenges and kind of made some solutions for these. First, for the safety and trust, Uber provides a profile for customers who want to travel. Before they accept these rides, the customers are able to go into these drivers' profiles, which are detailed with the car, kind of a little bit of background information. So this helps the drivers feel safe. Also, when the customers feel safe. When customers are being picked up as well, drivers have to have their logo, Uber logo, presented in their dashboard so the drivers can match the driver identification profile to the driver so they just feel more comfortable. Another solution to more of the cancellation accuracy problem, they created this thing called long pickup premiums. This benefits the drivers. So what was happening usually in cancellations is drivers aren't given their final destination when they accept to pick up a driver. So they can drive long distances to go pick up a driver, not knowing that maybe possibly they're only driving them 5 minutes away. So they're kind of losing money in the end. So drivers tend to cancel because they don't think it's worth it. So the problem with that is, people are then left waiting and they have no ride and they're just not happy. So they made the long pickup premium, which is pretty much reimbursing the driver the mileage that they have to travel if it's further to pick them up than their final destination. So now I want to touch a little bit back more on the Uber and taxi, and I kind of want to compare the two. So when doing this, I kind of focused more on the drivers because I thought it was really interesting. So some differences is for a taxi driver, they're driving a company car. So they're responsible for whatever happens to this car, and it's also taken out of their salary or insurance if something does happen. For an Uber driver, they're driving their own vehicle and their own insurance, so if something happens, it does suck for them, but that's on them. It's not conflicting with their work. Another thing is, for taxis, yes, they are working for themselves, but they are, again, under the company's supervision. So they're kind of working for the company and kind of doing what the company wants. Uber, these drivers can pick when they want to work. They can pick where they travel, this and that, and it's more for their self-benefit. And lastly, another thing that stood out for me for drivers was, again, as I mentioned this before, taxi drivers have to have a special license, and Uber drivers don't. They just have to be 21 or older and have the state license, state identification. So I thought this was really interesting. So with that being said, not only are customers transitioning to Uber, but drivers actually are as well. So when asking this, is there any other competitors? Because taxis aren't really a competitor for Uber. So this mentions the company Lyft. Lyft is the same kind of thing as Uber. It entered the market and it's kind of giving an Uber a run for its money. So then one can question, how is Uber maintaining its dominance? So going back to what I said before, in the growth strategies, the way they diversify themselves, the way they treat their customers, and they give promotions a lot, which is a part of Uber's strategies to stay high in the market. So to wrap this up, there's some takeaways in my research that I really found were important, and I want to say that prior to Uber, taxis economically were the top in the market. So now, since Uber has come out, taxis have actually lost statistically 90% of their worth, and in some research, drivers say they feel they lost all their worth. So as I said again, just touching back, drivers feel it's not worth it and they're kind of breaking their backs for no reason. So a lot of people are transitioning to Uber. And now that Uber is the top of the market, they economically are ahead of any other competitors, and they globally have their services. So they're kind of all around the world. And I think that personally, and I'm sure many other people who have researched this, and Uber can even agree, that they have kind of taken over the for-hire driving market. Thank you.